Okay, so I've put you all on mute. I have spotlighted my video, or spotlighted, an English lesson as well. And I've opened my chat box. So if you do want to ask any questions while we're working, this first bit, of course, while we're working the recorded bit, that's the place to ask them. And then when we finish the recording, I will take you off mute and we can have a proper Q&A to start. So just a quick wave, can you hear me and can you see me? Okay, lovely. And if you want to use the chat box, let me know whether you're staying for the make and create afterwards. I think we might have one or two, perhaps. We'll have to have a look. So as ever, let's recap on what we did last week. We were talking before filming started about straws and whose idea it was. And I will say that it was an idea, this project, from one of the ladies who regularly comes to class, who shall remain nameless. But I really love getting your ideas of what you would like to do. So we're on week 7 now of the 10-week course for staycation plans. And my thoughts after a short break will be turning to the upcoming Christmas season. So I would be interested to know whether you've got any ideas that you would, how would you like the next course to look? And if you've got any ideas, do you want to make it, themed for autumn and Christmas, or do you want to think about skills and things like that? So this is what we made in class last week, and I've been enjoying seeing the pictures of what you've made. And the one over my shoulder here is the one I finished off. So in class, I just demonstrated a little bit of the wrapping, and then afterwards I finished my class off. And I think from the feedback from you that the only hitch you've had is when you decided to neaten up the edges of your straws, because as you folded them, we were eyeing them up and folding them back, and some of them were different lengths. And it was just that common problem that we all had, was when you come and cut your straws, you're squeezing them slightly, and therefore they don't look quite so crisp. So I guess the answer to that would be to measure down how much you were folding each straw so that they were more accurate, or just go with the flow and just let it all go in and out. So that was what we made last week. Over my shoulder, I have a basket, and that's what we're going to be doing next week, a flower arrangement in a basket. I just move sideways slightly. I thought, wouldn't it be a nice idea, instead of doing a basket arrangement, as a trug, as a glorified container, a special container, which I think probably you may well have done before. Why don't we try and make an arrangement in a basket that actually hangs up? So if you don't have a hanging basket, we will do a more traditional arrangement in a conventional basket that's quite flat with a single handle. So it's entirely up to you. But if you fancy a little bit of a go, how about rooting around and seeing whether you've got any containers, baskets, bags that are going to be strong enough to hold a flower arrangement, and you could perhaps hang it over your kitchen door where you normally hang your apron up or something like that. So this could be fresh flowers. Just be careful though with fresh flowers, the foam is going to be very, very wet. So make sure your choice of basket is really, really sturdy. But if you want to have a go with dried flowers or silk flowers, we could bring those into the mix as well. So just to get you thinking for next time, I'm going to shuffle my stool across and cover up the basket rather than moving it for later on. So this week we're going to be decorating bottles. So I don't know whether you've actually got wine bottles to hand, how at market you're going, whether you've got a bottle of champagne you're going to decorate and gift to a friend. I don't have any real life wine bottles, but I have a selection of glass bottles. So this, I think I showed you this last week, it sort of looks like a vintage milk bottle. I'm sure it's never been anywhere near milk. It's just a modern reproduction. And all these are charity shop finds. I thought I'd test myself and try and incorporate a little bit of colour. So I've got this little sort of turquoise bottle and then a green carafe as well. So we'll have to see which one my hand goes to first when we start making. And then a little see-through bottle as well. And this is what we're going to be making in class today. So it's a little flower patch to add onto a bottle, so that if you were going around to see friends, you could gift them a bottle without putting the bottle into a gift bag. I don't know about you, but I've got drawers and drawers and gift bags I end up surfing out and going to the charity shop, or whether you're going to, I don't know how you normally gift your wine, whether you wrap it up in tissue paper or something like this. So that this would be a really lovely idea for gifting, perhaps a special bottle if it's a celebration and you're meeting friends and family. Or this could be something as an empty bottle that you do for yourself, and you could either put it on the side just as a little piece of a work of art. And I reckon most of that, this one's got a hydrangea florets on it, would probably dry and may well last you, 2 or 3 weeks before it actually looks as if it's flopping rather than drying. So you could have it on its own, you could have it, a single stem coming out. You could even, if you're, perhaps with this one here, I'm just pausing briefly, the dog was barking, someone's obviously at the door. I've forgotten to close the door into the living room. This bottle here, I'm thinking, well, perhaps it might be about the right size to put a candle in. So if you're recycling your bottles, you might be thinking of it as a candlestick or as a flower decoration to sit on your kitchen windowsill, or if you're having friends around for a casual gathering in your kitchen, have a line of these going down the kitchen table. So there's a few ways of doing the mechanics for this little piece. And you'll see here that my flowers are very flat to the vase. And that's because I have used a sticking plaster to be the mechanic, the basis of my little arrangement. And I'll show you how I'm going to do that. You might have gone out and bought one of the Oasis bumps, which is a small, well, it is a bump of flower foam that you would got a sticky label on the back, and you would stick that onto your side jar. The thing with that though, the bumps are quite deep and you won't get that smooth flush look with it. So we'll have to find out from you later, or perhaps you want to let me know in the chat box whether you're going for the sticking plaster method, whether you've got one of these flower foam bumps, or whether you're thinking, oh, I'm not quite sure what I want to do. And I'm going to give you an option for making a DIY flower bump if you think you would rather use the flower bump method and arrange your flowers in flower foam rather than gluing them in place. So if you do decide that you want to make your own bump, what you will need to do is to dive into your recycling. And I have got a milk bottle lid. I have an offcut of flower foam, some double-sided tape, and some, actually I don't think I'll need this, some narrow tape, because I've got my hot glue gun off at the side. So what I would do if I wanted to make my own little bump is I would push the flower cap into the end of my foam just to give me a little, use a little circular indentation, and slicing off a bit of the foam so I can decide how deep I want my foam to go. It's one of those things where you want enough foam to be able to arrange your flowers in, but not so much foam it's sticking out too far. So you could spend ages making this into a nice neat circle, but I'm making this into a many-sided shape. I'm just going to test that it sits in there. You see it's tiny, it's like a doll's house version of flower foam. And then with my hot glue over on the side here, and a dab of glue into the bottom of the milk bottle lid, and then glue that in place. It's slightly warm, but hopefully not so hot that you're actually going to be melting your milk bottle top. So there you have your own little mini bump. And then the problem is, how are you going to fix that to your container? And equally, the problem is, I've selected this bottle to show you because of the flat nature of the back of the milk top. It needs to go somewhere that is flat. And actually, even looking at this, I can see that the curved bottle, it curves away before the full the full flat body isn't fully attached. I'm struggling with my words here. This has got a round flat back, but the bottle is shaped, and probably the middle section is going to be fixed in place. So you'll either have to go around, if you do want to make your own, measuring out the bottle. So a larger container would work best because the curve on it would be less overall. And then you would fix it in place with some double-sided tape. So I'm really putting myself under pressure here, because the hardest bit of double-sided tape is to peel off the backing, as you know. But one other option is to tie this in place. So you would get a piece of wire and you would slide it right the way through as close to the rim as possible, and then lash it on at the back, but then it shows up a bit more, which is why I quite like the sticking plaster method. And as you can see from the little demonstration piece I did, I managed to get quite a lot of flowers in place. I won't spend the whole of the class peeling this tape off. I'll give it one more go, and if I can't do it, I'm going to just have to hold it up and show you. It's not going to come off, but imagine that's nice and sticky, and then you just hold it onto your container, stick it onto your container, and then you would start arranging from there. And then it's a matter then with that to making sure your mechanics are really, really firm. So again, I'm just slightly concerned about the curvature on the vase, and whether it's actually going to hold once you've weighted it down with water, a little bit of water like that, float it on the top, and there you go, you would be all set to go. So you get the idea if that is what you want to use. I think the bumps, I think they're a little bit difficult to use for those reasons, because they do stick out quite a long way. They do get heavy once you've wet them, and if you want to put them up sideways, you've got gravity playing against you. But if you were doing a little present, for instance, imagine you've got a beautiful gift that you've wrapped up, a nice square flat box. You could imagine if you'd wrap that up with a nice wide ribbon, and then you could take your double-sided tape off and put your bump on the top of your gift box, and then you could arrange a really nice lot of flowers on there, and it would look absolutely perfect. And of course, if you're really careful, you can pull it off the gift, put it on a saucer, and you'd have this mini arrangement. So I think probably that gives you enough of an idea. So I will be interested to know, let me know in the chat box what you think you're going to do. Are you going to go with your flower foam today, or are you going to go with the sticking plaster method? So while you're thinking about that, I'm going to clear the decks a little bit. This is going to be one of those things that's going to be quite intricate. So you need to sort of get in with your fingers, and the smaller the materials you cut, the more dainty it's going to be. And it may be, I've got my knife, not only for cutting my foam, but I thought I might use it as a sort of skewer to nudge things into place. But if you've got a pair of tweezers and you're quite good with your pincer maneuver, it may be that a pair of tweezers would be handy. Although I will say I managed to get quite intricate on that without a pair of tweezers, but that is an option. It's not a competition to see how good your manual dexterity is. If you need to use a tool to help you out, go ahead and use a tool. So we're saying in the comments that the bump was old, previous use on the top of a tube. I did notice that in the picture, it looks like it sort of had a bangle attachment, a sort of clasp attachment on there, and with a little tray at the side. So I'm quite intrigued to see what that one looks like, and we'll have to compare notes. So I will bring the second camera over the head, and then you can have a close look at what I'm going to do. I haven't shown you the materials of what I'm using today yet. So what I have got is a regular sticking plaster. That was the one I used for my demonstration piece, so you can see how big it is. And this one is slightly smaller, but that was the one I used. And this one is, finger sized. And I would say that I wouldn't go, although I said bring a large sticking plaster, it's like everything. The bigger your mechanic, the more effort you've got to take in covering it up. So I did have to put a little bit of effort covering up the sides, because I could see the plaster on the edges, and it wasn't very attractive. So if you dare, I would perhaps go, think about going with a slimmer plaster to begin with, or if you're not quite confident in the technique, go for the big one, and then you'll be able to, it's all about doing it first and then seeing what needs to be adapted. I have then got a piece of pipe cleaner. I like to zigzag my pipe cleaner onto whatever material I'm going to use, because I think it gives more of a three-dimensional sort of textural base for your flowers to stick on. I'm going to try, aside from gluing my pipe cleaner on with a hot glue gun, I am going to try and work with my cold floral glue. It's kind to the flowers, and it just gives you a little bit of maneuvering time, because it doesn't set immediately. And if I sort of misfire with something, I want to be able to sort of slide it back into position. And of course, the hot glue gun is really good. It dries instantly, but it does leave lots of trails, and it does dry to sort of quite hard white finish. And I don't want the glue to be a feature of my little flower patch. I want the flowers to do the talking. And then I always have a little tin of Vaseline as well. I don't know whether you've used glue before. You take the lid off, or perhaps you might not even be able to unscrew the lid because the overspill of the glue, it sort of glues everything in place. So when I finish my glue, I take the Vaseline, and you can see I've got little dobbing marks in there. I sort of dob it into the Vaseline and then screw the lid back on, and that is a surefire way of making sure you can actually get the glue open next time. And then in terms of flowers, it's a very light flower week this week, so I've got a few bits and pieces. There's some asters left over from last week, which have got a lovely white colour. I've got a few borage. I've got the seed head of the Crocosmia, or you might know that as Mombretia, some Trochilium, which is the purple, and some Japanese anemone, and a couple of stems, or a couple of florets, I should say, of hydrangea. Look, it's just almost getting to the stage now when it's ready to dry in the garden, and some pinky sedum as well. And I've also got a random stem of the spray carnation, but I don't think I'll be able to use that because although it's a tiny, tiny flower, it's got quite a lot of depth to it. And you can see, you know, if I put that with, I think it was sideways view there, if I put that in, so the bottom was glued to the glass jar, it sticks out quite a long way. So it's sort of flat materials that you want to use rather than just thinking small materials. So let's bring that camera over the top and I'll show you how I'm going to make my flower patch. So I've got an old cloth here. Because I'm going to be working on a bottle, I don't want the bottle to be rolling around. So what I'm going to do is that my old muslin cloth I used for painting with, I'm going to roll it in from either end, turn it around, and that sort of gives me a nice little sturdy bed for my vase. So I have taken a deep breath and gone for something with a colour to it. And then with my sticking plasters, I think I might go skinny with my sticking plaster because my bottle isn't particularly big. But of course, if you've got something really big, like if I was working on my carafe, I might want to go with a bigger plaster. And of course, you might want to think about making floral tattoos. If you're going to a party, we've made jewellery before in Zoom flower class, bracelets and necklaces and rings. Perhaps you know, how about making something on a sticking plaster that you could put onto your shoulder or something like that, or whether that's a step too far, you'll have to let me know in the comments. So there I was saying I was going to use a tiny plaster and I've opened the bigger one, never mind. And then entirely up to you where you're going to put it. Do you want your decoration, you know, across the bottom, straight up and down, off to one side? I tend to like things just off to the side a little bit, so I'm going to go sort of 1 o'clock to 7 o'clock there on the edge. You can see I've got creases in the top there, or that is because the bottle is shaped. But as long as I smooth it down, any of those sort of little imperfections aren't going to show up later on. And then with my pipe cleaner, you could just glue a piece of pipe cleaner on, but what I have done before is zigzag it up a little bit. It looks like a little hairy caterpillar moving across the top of my sticking plaster. So you don't need very much at all. So cut that off. And I'm just eyeing it up again in place. And then I'm going to put the glue onto the pipe cleaner rather than onto the sticking plaster because I don't want to have any more glue than necessary. So holding that down and just let that stick. So the hot glue is hot. I don't need to tell you that, but I'm using it because it's got an immediate stick. If you don't have the hot glue, you could use the cold florist glue, but you would just need to let it hold for a little while before it actually set. So that's what it looks like. And in fact, if you were being really, really ultra trendy, you know, perhaps you might find there's a place for sticking plasters and coloured bits of pipe cleaner going across the top of your bottles. So let's get going. So I'm going to have a look. I'm just going to move that glue gun out of the way. It's done its job now. At the flowers I've got, so I've already discarded. I don't want to use my spray carnation, but I may well use some of the flat heads of the aster that we had last week. So I'm going to put those up to one side. What I will use look at this, isn't this beautiful? Picked this morning. It's hornbeam and it's just starting to get some autumn tinges. So here we are filming on the last day of August and autumn is just around the corner. I've got some beautiful, the flat borage and also the fuzzy buds, a random bit of green, which I don't know what that is. That came in some flowers I was given in the week. And that's the crocosmia and the Japanese anemone, the trachelium flowers here. I'm just sort of sorting out what I've got so I don't get in a muddle. So I'm going to start off with my little leaves here. So I'm going to build this up as you would do any flower arrangement. So I want to have it sort of trailing off at the top here and the bottom. So my first placements are going to be these little leaves. And if you're lucky enough that you've got some fabulous bits of greenery, you know, some finer bits, which I might be able to get rid of that whole stem. I'm thinking a little bit here at the top and then a little bit down here at the bottom. So I'm going diagonally and probably, you know, in your mind, thinking about how you would put together a conventional flower arrangement, you sort of mark out the size of your arrangement with your greenery first of all. So I'm wanting to keep this all quite slimline. If I wanted to come out with more of a 3D effect, I can build that in later. So I'm going to start gluing. So I've got a saucer here and I'm going to squirt out the glue, trying to squirt out from the bottom and giving myself a sort of little smear there. You can see the glue, it starts bobbling out all over the place. And then taking my leaf, which I've had in water, so it's been conditioned, and I'm just going to then slide it across the glue like that. And it's got a tiny, I don't know if you can see that, it's like a dewdrop of glue on the back there. I'm not quite sure whether that's picking up on the camera or not. And then putting that in place. So you've had, it doesn't dry instantly, so you've got scope to maneuver it around a little bit. But you do need to be fairly committed to where you're going to put your placement of your leaves and your greenery. And it may be helpful, you know, if you wanted to sketch out the shape that you wanted to work to first of all. So it's entirely up to you, however you feel that you work best. So I'm primarily putting these leaves in to start to cover up the mechanic, the pipe cleaner and the sticking plaster, and giving me another base to work on. So I've sort of gone for an offset cross, straight down and then across the side. And then thinking about my focal flower, what I want to add in first of all. And also, you know, how long I want this to last. So here, this Japanese anemone is absolutely beautiful. But of course, once I've cut the head off, it's not going to last forever. It's not going to be like the hydrangea. But what I can do to help it, I've cut it, I've had it in water, so it has been drinking. And then if I seal in, make sure I put a dot of glue over the cut end of the stem, that will help seal in the moisture. But it also gives me something, you know, I'm gluing, it's going to stick. So I'm going to try and get the glue just on the circle, you know, an edge around, because that little bit of, you know, it's sealed in the moisture there, but I don't want to have that tiny just drop of glue there. I want a bit more glue so I can angle my flower in. And, you know, do you want it straight dead center, or do you want to angle it over a little bit? So I'm going to come a little bit down and then very gently, in order that you don't squash your flower, make sure it has properly glued in place. So you can see as I take that to the side, I'm starting to get a little bit of a, you know, just a slight raised profile. But if I had used the homemade little flower bump first of all, that would have made everything bigger and chunkier and not quite so dainty. So it just depends about the look that you're after. So having got that first placement in, I could think about putting my secondary flower in. So perhaps some of these little florets. And at the moment, I am trimming off directly behind the flower head. I'm not including any stem. I will include some stems later where I want to have a little bit of length. So again, there's glue on the cut end and a little bit of glue going around the florets at the edge there. And then thinking about where I'm going to put it in, because that time I didn't put it in flat. I've glued it down here, and then you've got the floret sort of bouncing upwards. So it's bridging the gap between totally flat and then this more upright placement of the Japanese anemone. So don't worry about the glue worrying your, spoiling your saucer. Although this is my craft saucer, but when the glue is dry, you can scrape it off with a palette knife. So you can sort of go back to a nice pristine condition there. So I've got a couple of flowers in there. Perhaps I want to lighten the mood a little bit, not have everything so solid. So now I might come in with some of these tiny buds of the Japanese anemone that are never going to flower now. Come a bit shorter and think about, first of all, just hold them in place. Well, where do I want that to go? Perhaps over here a little bit. So it's going to be quite delicate. It's not going to withstand much knocking around, but I can nestle it in. So can you see there that there's a gap between the two flowers? So if I glue along the stem of my bud, I could slide that in there and just get the right place. So let's go. So here's my glue. I'm going to pull my flower stem through the glue. And you can see there, it's like a snail trail of glue, turning my bottle round and then sliding that in. So this won't hop, actually it has held pretty well. Because the bud is a little bit heavier and it's on a curved stem, I thought it might flop over straight away. So you may need to just hold things, just support them a little bit while they dry and hold them in place. Just making sure I've actually got it where I want it to go. And then I've put those in that end. I might put two then to sort of repeat that pattern across the other side. So in that sense, it's exactly the same way as you would do any flower arrangement. You're trying to create something that looks visually pleasing with an overall, balance and harmony. So I'm sliding that little bud up underneath. So that one's probably glued to the underside of the anemone there. It's not actually in contact with either the sticking plaster or the piece of pipe cleaner. So once you've got your base materials in, you can follow through. So it does look really, really delicate there. And then you decide how much or how little you want to add in. I'm absolutely desperate to add in these blue, the borage. If I don't like them, of course, I could always, gently pull them off, just one at a time. So there I've taken it off right at the stem end. It's a nice flat flower. And this is the point where you want to be really careful. You perhaps consider using tweezers. I've then got to turn that over to slide it down through my glue again. So a little sort of rest up. This glue doesn't dry immediately, so it may be that once if you're making a couple of these, you might want to do your first design first of all, get the idea of what you want, and if you wanted to then follow up, you could glue your pieces of material ready to use, and then sort of a little production line, so I could then turn them over and have them waiting on the side of my my dish. So where should I put this? I think there's a little bit of a gap here where that exposed stem is. I can nestle that down into the gap, flicking the petals. I might have to use my knife here to get those petals to go the right way around. Just being really careful, I'm not creasing anything. So it's a little flash of blue to talk to the blue of the bottle without being totally obvious. And then the next thing you need to do is to have a look at your arrangement from all the directions it's going to be viewed at. So I've been working, just upright like this, but if it's going to be standing up, can you see once I have that more upright so you can see it, I can immediately see there's a little bit of green pipe cleaner there. And when I turn it to the side, there's a bit of green pipe cleaner here and here. So this is what I say is using the mechanics that you need, but use the smallest quantity of the mechanic, because I really do need, perhaps a sticking plaster might blend in with the leaves a little bit. You can see here. I don't think that looks too bad against the leaf, but it's just I've chosen a bright green pipe cleaner, partly so you can see what I was doing, but it's sort of not a colour that comes in nature, that bright green. So I need to think about covering that up, but not spoiling the overall design I've created. So then it's little tiny bits that will come to your rescue. So this is a really small piece of sedum, so I could break that up. Even that piece there is quite big, but maybe that you might be dividing things down and down and down, these tiny little florets, and perhaps even using just the tiniest flower. So you really can get away with having practically next to nothing here. So again, very gingerly holding the flower in my hand, sliding it through the glue, and then trying to position it in order that it goes over that piece of bright green pipe cleaner, and that starts to cover it up a little bit. And you just need to go through carefully, and at some point you do need to draw the line about how much you're adding in, because you may well find you're starting to detract from the overall look. But I reckon I could probably put a few more pieces in. So here I am going to glue direct onto there. I'm going to slide a little bit onto here at the end. Oops, that little bit came off of my finger. I can rescue that. Perhaps another piece round at the side. And then you just keep going and going, and at some point calling a stop to what you're going to do. So I think probably I am going to leave my little design like that. So I hope that's been clear enough for you to see. I'll hold it up to the camera when I come back to face you all, but hopefully you can see that. And that's why I love using the sticking plaster, because it just keeps everything quite neat. It hasn't come out too far, and it just looks really delicate, and it just seems to hang there. So it's quite a talking point. If you're having a little drinks party or dinner with friends, and you have these lined up down the table with or without candles, with or without individual flowers standing up through them, they're going to be amazed at how did you get that to stick. Of course, the giveaway is when you turn it the other way around, you can tell it's a sticking plaster, but perhaps if you didn't know it's a sticking plaster, you might not notice that. And I think it's just us as flower arrangers really having an eye out for mechanics. So I'm going to lay that one down there with its little cousin next door. And then I will bring the camera back to me, and I'll just put a stem of the aster in, just so you can see what it looks like with a little bit of flower. So before I go, I ought to perhaps tidy up my glue. So I've kitchen towel, I've used my finger, that I just slide it into the glue like that, into the Vaseline, and then screw the lid on. So that will mean next time I won't be struggling to get the lid off. So that is what we have just made. So it didn't take very long. I think it's just having the confidence to cut things really, really short, but also to have a little bit of in mind what you're going to do. And my go-to for anything like this is quite linear. It's sort of vaguely offset, a leaf at the top, a leaf opposite, something in the middle to connect the two. So I'm sort of always doing an offset cross, thinking about my focal flower, and then coming in with the hydrangeas, the secondary flower. So it's a bit like painting by numbers. I haven't randomly put the arrangement together. I've got a formula in my mind, which I'm always willing to change, but it just helped me sort of kickstart where I am going. So I will take some close-up photographs and put them into the email when I send those to you. But they do look rather attractive, don't they? So just bring those back to me. So if you wanted to add the flowers in it, perhaps if I switch this way, I'm to move my basket over there, and I would keep it simple. So for instance, a lovely gerbera. Probably I wouldn't normally use an aster, but because we had them last week, it's sort of a nice simple flower. I don't want to go out and buy other flowers when I can still enjoy these ones. But I will try and make it look slightly more classy and less cottagey by removing the little leaves on the edge. And you would just want to have a couple of stems like that. And whether you prefer it actually with the flowers and nothing in it, or whether you do actually want something, or whether you want to add the candles in as well. So that would be a nice option would be to, a combination of all of them, a few flowers in some, candles in the other. But you will, of course, when you go shopping or looking around your home for bottles, is take your candles with you so you can just measure up and see how it goes. I'm going to get rid of these. And of course, you'd have to put water in your jars. I haven't put any water in those. But that would be the little finished arrangement. So it's not so much about the flower that you're putting into the vase, it's more about the little decorative flower patch. And then, as I was trying to say, if you wanted to wear your flower patch, dare I take one off? Perhaps I'll do one when we make and create afterwards. But you could imagine if you were going to a nice party and you would make up your little your little flower patch, and then when you're ready to go, you could decide to, wherever did you want to wear your flowers. I don't know whether that's a step too far, but if you're staying to make and create with me afterwards, I might have a little go at that. Perhaps, if you've got a little off the shoulder number or something like that, it might be a fun thing to do. And I think that's what it's about, isn't it? When you arrive somewhere and you can say, oh yes, I did the flowers, and yes, I made the little brooch that I'm making as well. And of course, depending on your fabric, hopefully won't do too much damage. So just be careful that you're not doing this on very fine and sheer fabrics. And of course, if you're putting it on your skin as well, no one quite likes the feel of a ripped plaster on your arm. But it's just another way of sort of upping your game, really, and learning how to do something and then adapting it and changing the circumstances to create something a little bit special and extra. So I'm going to sign off the recording now. So I will do upfront photographs. I will do it from the back as well, so you can see when you come to do your little flower patches what mine look at the back, so you can sort of double check. So it's not wrong, but you can see the back. But it's just it's a nice, neat, purposeful application of the sticking plaster. So hopefully that won't detract from your overall design. So I shall say goodbye for my recorded viewers, and I will catch up with you next week when we'll be doing a basket of flowers and trying to think about something if you've got the option of a more upright basket. But if that's you can't find that, a conventional low-line basket, and we'll adapt the technique again to give you something really, really beautiful. I shall say goodbye and take you all off record for the rest of the ladies that are able to stay, and then we will open up for Q&A.